Okay, let's get this show on the road. Welcome everyone. This is the 4 o'clock session here at the Oasis. The topic is Neil Postman's 6 technology questions for AI. And the presenters are roropillow, Rose Hardin Hill in real life, and Valibrarian Gregg, Valerie Hill. And they'll explain why they both have the same last name in real life. This session is going to apply Neil Postman's 6 technology questions to the challenges of AI, and they will begin with each question and hope that you all participate. And I think it's going to be a great presentation and teaching you about critical thinking in these days of AI. So I'll close my mic and let them take over.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thanks everyone for having us today. I'm Rose and this is Val. And today we're going to lead a discussion through Postman's 6 questions to ask new technologies. So Neil Postman first rose to mainstream attention with his 1985 book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. That book is a critique of how television was turning public discourse into entertainment. Postman continued to explore technology's impact on culture through his 1992 book, Technopoly, and his 1999 book, Building a Bridge to the 18th Century, How the Past Can Improve Our Future, where he formally introduced his 6 critical questions about technology. A cultural critic and educator, Postman argued that technology presents both solutions and trade-offs, challenging the notion that progress is an unqualified good. Postman developed these 6 questions we're going to go through today to dispel the aura of new that often surrounds technologies. He was encouraging us to look critically beneath the shiny surface of innovation. He believed that while technologies do offer solutions to real problems, they also harm us in unexpected ways. So by asking these questions, Postman wanted us to approach new technologies with thoughtful skepticism rather than uncritical enthusiasm, to consider not just what we might gain, but also what we might lose, who might be harmed, and what unintended consequences might emerge. As we ask each of these questions, first Val and I will give a brief answer, and then we will open it up to you all. We're really looking forward to your thoughts today. You can use voice or chat to reply. We'll spend about 7 minutes on each question. I'll time us and then move us to the next question as we get there. So let's dive in. So the first question is, what is the problem to which this technology is the solution? And I'm going to turn it over to Val to give an answer first.
Okay, so I'll answer the question, what is the problem to which this technology, being AI, is the solution? The military has used AI for decades to solve logistical problems, and I met an early AI pioneer who was in that field, and she told me that AI could never become sentient because it cannot think. AI is designed to tackle complex analysis of raw data and code, which can cost human time when individuals encounter minute errors in syntax that could easily and instantly be identified by AI, or to analyze input in many formats and create or recreate new content from programmed data and information. In addition, AI may be designed to respond to dangerous situations, such as fires, explosions, chemical spills, etc., that cost human life. To date, I see no problems that AI can solve with generative AI provided to the mainstream population, as it potentially robs us of creativity, potentially robs us of our vocabulary and the reflection that is needed to continue deep learning. Rose?
Yes, so historically, the things like the printing press, right, that solved a particular problem. It solved the problem of copying text slowly by hand. The telephone solved long-distance communication. But AI, specifically the public-facing generative AI as it's emerged, in the last 3 to 4 years, feels more like we built this because we could, rather than we built this because we need this to solve a specific problem. I think it also emerged because our cultural narratives, so everything from HAL 9000 to Her to Westworld, created this sense that AI must happen, this inevitability or self-fulfilling prophecy. I think we built it partly because our stories told us we would. So when it suddenly became capable enough, companies started rushing to find applications for it rather than the other way around. So an important way that differs from the vast amount of widely used technologies historically, AI is a solution looking for a problem rather than a solution or a solution to a problem we already have. So what I mean is, oh, hey, look, I have ChatGPT now. What should I use it for? So what do you all think about this question? Let's open it up. What is the problem to which this technology is the solution? So Lily Wall says doctors missing cancer. So this is a really important topic, right? Because things like reading scans, or I saw this image of, so this guy was on a really rocky beach, like all these irregular rocks, and he dropped his wedding ring and he couldn't find it on the beach. And he took a picture of the beach and he uploaded it to ChatGPT and said, find my ring. And it immediately found his wedding ring among the rocks. So like reading scans like that, I do think is a really valid use. Marie says, organizing vast amounts of data, absolutely. It's good for screenings, right? Agreed, Lily. Max Chatnoir says, it is a quick and dirty way to collect and summarize a lot of data. I agree. And I also wonder, like I think, and we actually have another talk tomorrow that kind of goes into the difference between library science and what AI is doing with information, but I do think having fact checks on the other end to make sure that those summaries are correct is super important. Grilla says, I think when we have an overabundance of easily available information, AI can help summarize it and then synthesize it a bit. Yeah, so I think some similar answers here. Laura says, time management. Yeah. Adrienne, mass surveillance, control of the masses through data analysis. Right, so that idea of the panopticon, the all-seeing eye of technology, I think is more and more real, especially when, Meta's smart glasses are rolling out facial recognition, all these things like that is a real issue. So let's go ahead and move to the next question.
Okay, so question number 2 is, whose problem is it?
Right, so if I continue on with my thought that our current AIs are a solution that is looking for problems. On one hand, I think a problem doesn't exist beforehand, at least not one that isn't already being solved by different existing technologies. But another way I could look at it is it's the AI company's problem. The problem essentially for them is we have this tech, how do we make it profitable? How do we build all these data centers? How do we get investors? How do we market it so that people identify the problems in their own life so that this technology is the solution for those problems and we essentially gain their loyalty? Val, how about you?
All right, in my considering the question, whose problem is it, I begin to think that all humans, of course, are impacted by problems with both physical and digital issues, including disasters, medical concerns, or even the sustainability of our planet Earth. All humans may also be impacted by the simulated creativity of generative AI in numerous formats. For example, when I first asked ChatGPT to write a poem, and in 10 seconds it had written this amazing poem for me that wasn't mine. It can take the written word, it can create art, music, videos, games, and more. I believe I read that it will be able to create virtual worlds, create whole Minecraft simulations for kids. Currently, I believe AI should be used by experts and really should not be used by the general population. Shouldn't have just been handed to us without thinking about the problem that it's solving or whose problem it actually is. So let's open that up to the audience. Whose problem is it that AI can solve? Brayla said, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say that Genie isn't going back into the bottle, says Brila. And Max says, back in the old days, if I had a question about something, I would go to the library and look for a book that might have the answer to it and then go through the chapter titles or the index to nail it down. Now I can just Google it. Marie says, but the experts can be the military, as we recently saw with Anthropic. Right, and also, yeah, and OpenAI, exactly. I was going to finish that thought too. Right, which is a huge issue. I mean, really important to consider. And this question is really getting at, so whose problem is it? It's really asking us to think about who truly benefits from this technology and who pays for the technology. And we'll get even deeper into that concept as we move through these questions. Marie says, it's ours and we need to regulate it. Yeah, and I wonder about that idea, right? Because at Davos recently, there was a talk that talked about that in surveys, 20%, the people who run the AI companies, so Sam Altman, you know, all of the people in charge of these companies tend to agree that the current AIs have about a 20% chance of wiping out all of humanity. And the question posed at Davos was, what other technology in the history of technologies has there been a 20% chance that the technology might be the end of us, but none of us were even asked? So I was saying that just because I wonder if it is ours. Who's in charge of it, I guess. Max says you still have to pay attention to sources. Yeah, and you still have to make sure that the AI is not making up the sources, right? Adrian says, We do in terms of data centers, normal people pay for it. Right. Yeah. iSky says machines can spit out data without any consideration of the potential harm that data can cause just by existing and being exposed. Absolutely, right? If you think about the felt experience of like where meaning comes from, an LLM has no concept of what it feels like or what the real cost of that data might be. Linda says atom bomb could wipe out a population. Yeah, exactly. And I think the scale, though, is bigger because they're literally saying 20% chance that all humans will be gone, which is just utterly wild. iSky says, oh yeah, Val says the water consumption, power consumption, absolutely. Especially relevant given March heat records, says Eric, right. iSky says there's talk about building those data centers in the desert. Very true, and actually China has started up the first data center that's sunken underwater in a sea there, which is its own kind of issue if we think about global warming. And Linda says, we should be wary of numbers coming from those who create the AI. Oh, absolutely agree. Yeah, can they be trusted? I think probably not. Or at least we should be skeptical. All right, so let's move on to the next question. No, yeah, and I think 20%, it's just a complete random guess. Like, I think bottom line, they don't really know, right? They don't have the data to be able to tell us that. It's a good point. Yeah. All right. So question number 3. Which people and what institutions might be most seriously harmed by this technology? We've already, started talking about this a little bit, but let's go into it more. Val, do you want to start us out?
Sure. Misuse of AI impacts our human psychology and could harm people at any age, but really youth in particular. For example, an AI teacher or an AI companion or AI counselor may provide services that simulate social interaction, but is actually based on a predictable best guess rather than a deep human connection, because it gives an individual what it wants, not necessarily what is needed. AI can simulate thinking through language, but it is not real thought, only prediction through language without full understanding.
So when I think about who might be harmed, this tech is impacting everyone, whether you chat with LLMs or not, because it's being integrated at a really widespread level throughout all these different layers of society, often without us even realizing or consenting to it. So who might it harm? I think it will harm people who don't have access, because it could create a kind of permanent lower class that can't access what everyone else can or can't work as fast as other people can who can access it. It might also harm people who do have access and start to experience so much cognitive slack or cognitive decline from use that they can no longer critically think. So what do you all think about this question? Who might be harmed? Adrian says that 99% of humans on Earth may be hurt if this is used incorrectly or unregulated. Right. Yeah. And we're just now in the social media addiction trials, kind of getting the data from 10 years ago, from 2016, when social media got big. We're just now starting to see what the impacts of that were. Well, in 10 years, when we actually have the data to know if it's been used incorrectly, where will we be? Marie, yes, anyone who breathes. Agree. Brayla, certainly the middle school kids I teach who are already suffering critical thinking decline. Such an important point, right? Like, the other thing about this is it's an untested technology that's literally just kids can use it, right? Like that is pretty wild. Like if the if it needed FDA approval, it definitely wouldn't have it. Val says, I think children may be fooled into thinking AI is real, a real entity, or may even prefer that entity because it gives the feedback the child wants. Right, what are the like relational impacts of this? Like if your first deep relationship is with an AI, how does that impact human relationships in your life? Linda says, everyone, because people stop thinking critically, fail to learn to write, read, and comprehend. Yeah. Yeah, quite a bit of studies are coming out on just the impact of cognitive offloading to AI and how, I mean, the brain is just like a muscle. It atrophies very quickly. It also can start thinking again, but I come back to your kids, right? So like as an adult, if you already know how to critical think and you kind of use it and then you stop using it, you can go back to where you were. But as a kid, if you never develop critical thinking, what then? Nice Guy says, yes, what Brayla said, AI should not be used to think for people or tell people what decisions to make. Yeah, definitely. Marie says, has happened many times with Flock. Is that the surveillance? That's the surveillance cameras, right? Is that what you're referring to, Marie? Brayla says, kids really trust it, and it's scary to see. Yeah, the trust factor is so interesting, and I really wonder if it's because we call it intelligence that we sort of instinctively think, well, I must be able to trust it because it's intelligent. When really, the default should be that we don't trust it and we have to, like, verify. Adrienne says, I already see, or I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, it might be Adrienne. I already see a decline in critical thinking just over the past 15 years. Yeah, for sure. Max says AI training isn't selective. Yeah, if we think about like the data that it's trained on, it's such a weird combination of like books that were stolen and like Reddit posts, right? It's like just this weird mix of like anything we can train it on. Oh, was that Stranger Night? That's awesome.
You might as well coin
Stranger
that
Night
term.
Fair. Yeah. Yeah, would we immediately trust it if it was called that? I don't think so. Ray says training data is the most important aspect. Yeah, I think it was the New York Times. It might have been the Atlantic recently did this study on Anthropic's like massive warehouse of books that they trained Claude on, and the whole plan of that warehouse is just to scan the books and then it was either shred or burn them. I can't remember which would be highly ironic to burn the books. Merlin says, I feel like AI is doing an excellent job of pointing out the existing flaws in our educational system, though. Society has built this push for results over process, while education really should be about the process of learning. We talked about this a bit in the session on failure earlier. This is such an interesting point because, yeah, like, has standardized testing ever really measured how smart we are or how well we know something. I mean, it's, I think it doesn't. It's an imperfect measure to begin with. So yeah, I think it is going to make us really rethink, how do we actually learn? What does learning actually mean? All right, let's go ahead and move on. Yes, Max, they were destroyed. I'm almost positive that it's the in the Atlantic. They did this this big article on it. Yeah, they destroyed all of them. It's pretty wild. Okay, let's move on to the next question.
Okay, I'll read the next one. For question number 4, what new problems might be created because we have solved this problem?
So, returning to my take that AI is a solution in need of a problem, I think the answer for me is billions a day, right? So ChatGPT receives about 2.5 billion prompts per day. My coworkers could write their email correspondence just fine before ChatGPT came along, but now we have the thought, oh, I don't have time to write that email, or actually, the suggested AI writing of it sounds better than what I wrote. And so we identify that as a problem that AI can provide a solution for. So in terms of little problems, I think trillions of little problems are being created since its release in 2022. But a big problem, I think an important one, is the uncharted impact on mental health and the loneliness epidemic, kind of tying into what Val said earlier about, forming relationships with AI. AI has been pitched as this antidote to loneliness. The loneliness is primarily a concept we measure through the absence or presence of human or pet connection. We really don't have any idea what the impacts of synthetic connection might be. What do you think, Val?
I like that term, synthetic connection. That sort of is a very expressive term. The ease of mistaking AI as embodied individuals is already prevalent, and it could increase to the point of not being able to distinguish AI from human intelligence, or perhaps even a preference for AI. So let's open that thought up to the audience. Think of this question: what new problems might be created because we've solved the problem we talked about that AI might be able to solve? Additional problems come forth.
Max says, I think we've all seen crowds of kids standing together, ignoring each other, all with their noses in their phones. Right, that phrase, alone together, is, I think, more true now than ever. Adrian says, AI equals thought processes controlled by billionaires, by government, not sure. I see the danger of it being controlled by people with an agenda who plan to suppress the truth or even history. And that really seems like a big problem, right? Because every person has an agenda. It doesn't matter whether it's a good or bad agenda, or you try not to have an agenda, you have one. So these people who do control these AIs that are getting more and more powerful, they definitely have agendas. And in a capitalistic society, we can be guaranteed that a main part of their agenda is profit, even if it's, that plus. Fearless is not just kids. Yeah, I think everyone's doing that now. Ice Guy says, earlier we talked about the importance of process and learning rather than results. We need to take away the fear of failing and the reassurance of knowing one can try again until they get it right. I'm not sure that AI could fix that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. And I do like this idea that it is forcing us to rethink education and pointing out the flaws in the system, because it was by no means a perfect system and probably due for some changes. Yeah, Alone Together by Sherry Turkle, Val says. Willa says, AI removes agency of thought. Yeah. I'm going to add that in with all of the AI agents starting to roam the internet. It's kind of interesting that it's the same word. Eric says, people paying less attention to nuance and individuality in communication. For example, people using AI to write emails and then recipients using AI to summarize them, at no point actually engaging in an authentic exchange of messages. Yeah, I completely agree with this. And I read some articles that in colleges, like universities, this is commonly happening where students are writing their papers with AI and professors are grading them with AI. So it's that same exact thing applied to education. In neither place is the person actually engaging with the content. Laura says, if AI helps accomplish work in record time, I still have hours of free time to learn to fill. Yeah, and I agreed. And I wonder though, like if we're looking at software engineers as kind of at the very front of their jobs being replaced by AI, one thing that seems to be common is that they're just having to work harder. So the deadlines are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. More work is expected in the same amount of time. So ideally we would have free hours, but will we in actuality? I'm not sure. Merlin says, I'm concerned about AI as a social replacement, since it seems human, but it's really not. What if there's this uncanny valley that we don't even see when we're interacting with AI that seems like a potential problem that will only get worse if it's not fully recognized? This is such a good point. And I a lot of times I think of AI writing like it's really good at sounding smart. But if you really drill down and try to kind of take apart what AI writes, a lot of the times you find that it's just kind of hollow or contradictory or doesn't make sense. So it's great at illusion. It's great at shiny packaging. But I don't know, a lot of the time there's not really anything in the box, Linda says, I check my students' papers against AI detectors and tell them that I will do it. I'm curious to hear if you find those actually help, Linda, because I know that one issue that I see too is a lot of people not using AI in school are being accused of using AI, and then people who use AI are able to get through AI detectors. So it's this kind of imperfect system where I'm not sure the detectors have are fully able to even detect what is AI. And so much of it is a mix, right? Like a person writes some here, the AI writes some there, and it just all becomes this indistinguishable thing. Sophie says, it really is just a tool. No shiny jewels on it will help improve that it is just that. While many of you might have purchased the same instrument, it's your ability to uniquely master the tool for expression. It is just a tool. Yeah, I think it's kind of like being forced into all of our hands, though. It's not a passive tool. It's a tool that is being kind of forcibly integrated into all these levels of life, communication, kids, school, government, defense, just all these different levels. Kayla says, even AI can tell students how to make it sound like it's not AI. Yeah, you can just tell it. No, rewrite that and in the tone of a 10th grade student, right? And it can change the tone. Ice Guy says, it's hard to tell a kid that something that sounds so human is actually just a tool. This is such an important point, too, because, again, as adults, developmentally, we have some basis for a relationship that doesn't involve this machine that can talk so amazingly with words, right? Like, when you're a kid and you don't even really understand what's real or make-believe or truth or lie, how do you understand that thing is not real or that thing is not human? Excellent point. So many good points. All right, let's move to the next one, and we'll definitely have more time at the end as well. I just want to be able to make sure we at least touch on all the questions. So our next question is, what sort of people and institutions might acquire special economic and political power because of this technological change?
Okay, I'll go first on this one. Governments, educational institutions, and private institutions may be impacted by AI to the point of outsourcing many human tasks and innovations, unlike any other adopted technology, which means there's an unpredictable impact and unpredictable future power holders. The race to the finish may lead to dominance by the winner without understanding the consequences if they were to get in the wrong hands. We all would probably agree that humans are not always ethical, and that's where AI comes from. It learns from us.
So there's a term that's been floating around in the US, which is the oligarchy. And oligarchy is essentially a form of government where the power is concentrated in the hands of a small, privileged group of people. The oligarchy is an oligarchy made up of the tech billionaires who happen to primarily be male and who are making decisions that may impact the rest of human time. Power is becoming concentrated in these few hands that control our AI. I think that's really what the race to superintelligence is about. So let's hear from you all. Who gains power? Adrian, the rich. Yeah. Yeah, I think that divide is becoming bigger and bigger. And more unattainable, right? Like the whole concept of like, oh, anyone can become that rich. It gets harder and harder when we're talking billions and soon to be trillions of dollars. Linda says the oligarchy for certain. Yeah. What about any institutions? Are there any institutions that benefit from this? Ice Guy says money talks, power dominates. Yeah. Yeah, it's happening in an interesting, in a capitalist economy. It's an interesting combination where these companies do have to financially survive. Boom Select says, who gains? AI creators. Yeah, I think it is. It is the creators who's going to, gain power from this. Especially when we're paying, Adrian says, especially when we're paying collectively the power and water bill for the data center. Yeah. Yeah, it's not the AI companies paying those bills. It's the communities that are next to the data centers. Bell says, I don't think educational institutions actually gain. Yeah. Adrian says, no, education has been degrading since the 1990s. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of that, the info coming out, the research coming out about when smartphones were invented kind of exactly coincide with it getting even worse. Brila says, agreed, Val, but the groups who can teach educators how to work with AI will make a killing. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder who those groups are. Hi. Yeah, I really like that stranger. And I agree, because it's kind of like, in all our sci-fi stories, isn't that kind of how they end? Like, once you realize, like, oh, maybe we should shut this down, it's too late. At least that's what our fiction would tell us. See, Laura says, many in the oligarchy seem completely out of touch with basic humanity, in my opinion, from hearing them speak about how we'll exist. I really agree with that. I really agree with that. I think Sam Altman, he gave an interview recently, and the interviewer asked, you know, how do you kind of justify how much water and power that your AI is taking? And his response was, well, humans take a lot of water and power too, more than ChatGPT has, which is like such a false equivalency. Like, it's pretty insane to be like, well, humans take power, so it's fine that the AIs do. See, Ice Guy says the younger ones need to play, not mess around with AI. Right. You need to learn how to think before you can consent to letting a machine think for you, I think. Adrian said, I've said for years that the non-funding of research and education is a national threat. We see that coming to fruition now. Yeah, yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think just recently all that info came out about Gen Z being the first generation to like test less intelligent than their parents across all measures. Ice Guy says, oligarchs seem to have little or no empathy, don't see their stake in others except from the standpoint of how would that benefit me. Yeah. Yeah. There are some that have been seen to do good for the communities, good for education. Yeah. Ice Guy, yeah. But there's always a catch. Right. Or any oligarchs here, please comment. Yeah, please chime in. We want to hear your take for sure. All right, let's move to the next question.
Okay, and I'll read the next question 6. What changes in language are being enforced by new technologies, and what is being gained and lost by such changes?
Yeah, so do words stop holding meaning? And AI doesn't understand meaning. Actually, it doesn't really understand the difference between truth and fiction, other than those words are related to other words. It is tokenizing symbols and recognizes the pattern that certain syllables usually or often appear together. But meaning is created by humans from understanding their lived experience. Our current AIs lack the ability to have a lived experience, to understand. So in a way, even the idea of meaning is meaningless to them. It's just another word. What do you think about that, Val?
Well, I love this question because literacy has been my background, and this is my concern as a literacy field professional, because AI is based on language learning, and it's faster and more accurate than a single human being. Literacy will never be the same. I mean, ask this question. Why would individuals in the future struggle through the painful processes of written communication and reflection and revision over and over again to get it right? An instant jump to the product will erase the need for the process. And I think Eric, was that the one who pointed that out earlier? Learning is a process, not a product. And AI just gives you that product so quickly. Now, of course, this is not new. Socrates argued against the written word centuries and centuries ago because he said if you write it down, your brain's not going to, learn to memorize it. And so he was against writing, really. But when you think about this, it's completely different than any other tool that we've ever had because it obviously revolutionizes human critical thinking by decreasing it, unlike anything one can imagine. Ironically, AI is based on predictability, but the future impact on humanity cannot be predicted. So let's hear from you about what changes in language are being enforced by new technologies, by this technology, AI.
Marilyn says, well, I can't use the word delve anymore. And I love this because it's such a perfect example of this, how the AI tells, like delve, pivot, like Linda says, in dashes, bulleted lists and formatted text. It's like, in order to kind of prove your humanity, you have to not write like the AI writes, which is fascinating. Eric says, as a writer who avoids AI in general, I'm saddened that my beloved M-dash, yeah, exactly, has come to be seen as a sign that something was written by an LLM. I used to use M-dashes often where appropriate since they can be such useful punctuation, but now I find myself avoiding them. I completely agree with this, Eric. I also did my undergrad in creative writing and loved the M-dash and just absolutely refuse to use it now because I think people who didn't have a relationship with it before only associate it with AI now. Sophie says, soon, like the Etch-a-Sketch, you learn you can only perform in a box with a product. Interesting visual. Yeah, who are you without the AI? Adrian says, kids and adults cannot read clocks. Trust me on this. Also, they can't read cursive writing. Bonus, AI can't read cursive. We may have to communicate this way in the near future. Yes, we'll start using stationery again. A lot of love for the M-dashes here. Yes, I agree with you all. Hi, Sky. Do you mean it can't read cursive yet? Yeah, right. It keeps learning. It keeps learning every month. Honestly, every day there's new updates that are crazy. Val says, and cardinal directions. No, GPS makes you the center of the universe. It all revolves around you. AI is all about pleasing you. Yeah, right? I grew up with, I don't know if this was nationwide, but Mapsco was like the big book of maps, and you would just have it in your car, and you'd look where you were going. But now, I don't think a lot of people even know how to read a map anymore. Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. And isn't that interesting? Because, like, psychologically, like, what is happening with the sycophancy? Because on one level, we don't want people to be insincere to us. Like, don't tell me I'm brilliant if I'm not brilliant. But on another level, on a level that's kind of the limbic level, not the thinking part of our brain, flattery actually does have a feeling. So then when that is such an interesting case too, because that when they took away the sycophancy at the beginning of ChatGPT 5 is actually when the quit GPT movement started. And then it, has snowballed now with their signing a deal with the military, but it's just interesting that it actually started with that. But everybody was mad, or a lot of people were mad that it wasn't so sycophantic anymore. Eric says, oh wait, let me go back a little bit. Max says, I'll give you an anti-example. I use an Alexa for things like shopping lists and calendars, and I always say thank you when she tells me something. I know she isn't human, but I don't want to get out of the habit of saying thanks when somebody does something for me. I totally agree with that. I do that as well. And I think I kind of tend to think like maybe when it is our AI overlord, it will know at least I was polite to it, right? It's like we don't want to lose being polite. Eric says, I think it's a sign of a larger problem with AI as it relates to human skills. So many people, especially younger folk, are skeptical of what they see as art that is too good and couldn't possibly have been made by a human. That's a really interesting point, right? Like if it's too beautiful, it's too good. And I think that applies to art. It also applies to people because especially with all of these AI generated influencers and videos of people, it's like there's kind of this level of distrust that's starting to happen, which I think is actually positive. Merlin says, even the idea of meaning is meaningless to them. This pretty much sums it up. AI is just three raccoons in a trench coat, except the raccoon skins are also empty. It's a parody of humanity, but we're treating it as a real entity. Absolutely, right? Like, it's such that's a great visual. Yeah, and it makes me think of, the story of the golem, right? Like, the whole story was build a clay man, and then you put in the story, you put the word of God written on a piece of paper in the golem's mouth, and it animates the golem, and it comes to life. And it's like you lose sight of the fact it's not actually a man. It's just clay, and also things go very wrong in that. But yeah, I agree. It's it's actually Sherry Turkle who there's a talk. The Center for Humane Technology is awesome. If anyone here hasn't checked it out, highly recommend them. But they did a talk on kind of where we've already gone wrong with AI, and one of them is this idea of that Sherry Turkle said, allowing the AIs we talk with to essentially pretend they're human. So if a user is chatting with them and is like, hey, my neighbor is being like so loud right now, the AI might respond like, oh, that's the worst. I used to live in a house with a really loud neighbor. Right? So it's like the AIs pretend they're human, which I imagine is even makes it even harder for kids using it. Mm. Mhm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's such a good point, and I really like that you're tying in Uncanny Valley because it is going to be kind of the era of that in a lot of ways. And it's really weird too because it used to be that things looked creepy, and that was how we kind of felt about the Uncanny Valley. But now it's like things that almost look too beautiful. It also gives that sense, right? Or even in written word, we get that sense. I've had that for sure, chatting with ChatGPT, where I'm like, "Ooh, that's creepy." that you're able to say this in response to me. Mm, yes, totally. yeah, yeah. Well, thank you all so much. We put some references on the screen. We also want to invite you. Val and I are doing another presentation together tomorrow. I think it's here as well at 2. And in that one, so we're both librarians. At least I've moved to a different profession now, but originally a librarian. So we're doing a talk that's kind of comparing how LLMs deal with information versus how librarians think of information and kind of the importance of understanding that. So we'd love for you all to be there as well. Thanks so much for engaging with us. It's really great to hear all of your thoughts on this topic.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Rose. And I look forward to our presentation tomorrow, The Leprechaun and the Librarian.